With us on High Bank Fury, the podcast, I have Mark Garrow from PRN Radio. He's our NASCAR insider. He also is the host of a awesome little podcast called The Garage Pass, and you can catch all that on PRN.com as they post a lot of content, a lot of podcasts, and a whole lot more. And you'll forget far more than I know as far as that's concerned. But how things going for you, Mark? You just hung it up after I don't know how many years with PRN. I know you've been in the business 40 years.
Well, I went to Daytona for my first broadcast in 1982, and I was one of the last two folks at the racetrack that were on the air when Richard Petty won his 200th race. The other, Mike Joy. Now Mike will be the lone soldier in that category. I'll still be around the racetrack doing various things. I'm going to pick up a little project here or there, but the daily grind, the weekly grind, I've been with PRN for, I think, better than 35 years. And so that part of it I'll be giving up, but certainly appreciate PRN, Speedway Motorsports, and all the years we've worked together.
Yeah, I think that, taking a look with your career, what is probably some of the biggest changes you've seen since 1982 when King Richard won his 200th to right now when Denny Hamlin won his 60th this year?
Well, I think number one, the cars have changed dramatically. And in one category, it's certainly been a major plus, and that's the safety side. With the safety inside the cars, the Hans device for the drivers, the safer barriers, those kinds of things. We haven't lost a driver since the unfortunate death of the late Dale Earnhardt, right? Knock on wood. And so that's been, I think, the biggest difference. The racing, again, you look back at the racing in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, it was really good racing. And I know a lot of people now talk about, hey, you look at these races and the, 8 cars on the lead lap or 12 cars on the lead lap. Now we've got 20 or 25, that kind of thing. But I think the difference from when I, started this to now, it meant everything to win. These drivers raced for most of their money. They got a little bit of a base salary, but they knew the big golden nugget was go out and win the race. And you couldn't pay a Cale Yarborough to lay down and accept second or third place. David Pearson, Richard Petty, Buddy Baker, these guys were hardcore racers, man. Darrell Waltrip, Dale Earnhardt. I mean, I had such a blessing to see so many different eras in my 40 plus years in this business, to go from an era where Richard Petty, David Pearson, Cale Yarborough were still winning, but not at the rate, of course, that they had in their heyday. But I got a chance to see them when they were still getting it done in a pretty good way. And then you move on to Darrell Waltrip, and then you move on to Dale Earnhardt, and then Jeff Gordon, and then Jimmy Johnson, and Kevin Harvick, and Kyle Busch. I've had a chance to see so many great race drivers over that span of time, but the cars have certainly changed. The safety part of it certainly is a plus. I'm not sure if we've always done the right thing from a competitive standpoint with the cars. I'm not a big fan of these diffusers on the back. I like most of this, the downforce coming off a spoiler. That's what these guys were brought up on, made for better racing. Yeah. I don't like the air dams on the front, and putting the cars right slap down on the ground. I certainly would like a little bit more air under the car. That seemed to make things more interesting. But the competition level all those years, and even now, is so much better than any other motorsport in the world. I love IndyCar racing, and I love to watch Indy 500, and some of the stuff they do on ovals, just amazing. F1 cars, absolutely technology wise, absolutely amazing. Bullets from 0 to 100. But the bottom line is the best competition in the world in motorsports is in NASCAR. I mean, you look at Talladega 4 wide. Now you look at Phoenix the other day, the truck race 7 wide. That is not anything that you'll see anywhere else. So NASCAR should get high marks for all these years, still having, no matter what the changes have been, still having the best competition, in my opinion, in the motorsports world.
Yeah, I have a statement before we go to a very quick break. You know, Indy cars were doing 240, 250 30 years ago. NASCAR was doing 220, 230. These cars undoubtedly could be going close to 300 or higher, but it's just not safe to race at that kind of a speed. You can still put on a great show for a lot less, but I think that at some point safety had to come in instead of speed, because look at all the guys that have lived, that we have living Hall of Famers now instead of guys that did make it for their entire career.
Well,
So
well, Roy, I'll give you a really good example of about speed and
sure.
how the all-out pursuit of that may have cut short what we think was the golden era of NASCAR. Because when I first started out in this sport, I remember being in Talladega and standing in front of a tore down fence after Bobby Allison went into it and had parts flying into the crowd. And we had no idea if anybody in the crowd had been killed, no idea if anybody had been injured, right? And right there, if that had been a catastrophic situation like Le Mans had many, many years ago, that would have been maybe not the death knell for NASCAR, but it certainly would have set us back, and we might not have ever been able to come back again to what turned out to be the golden era in the sport. And as I stood there, and I was a very young man, I stood right in front of that fence, and everybody, again, safety crews and ambulance people are in the crowd trying to figure out what's going on. There were a lot of people injured. Thankfully, nobody, too badly injured. And I thought, I go like, is my career over? Is my thoughts of being in this business for 20, 30 years, is this over right here, right now? If people are dead in the grandstands, this could be it. This could be it. And so thankfully, nobody was hurt. And then NASCAR at that point. So one of the main reasons the speeds have to come down is not only we're thinking the safety of the drivers, but we have to think about the fans. If we're going to let these guys run 300, we got to have the stands 100 yards back and 100 feet in the air if we're going to allow those kind of speeds. So they had to do it. But man, oh man, back in the day, to have them at Michigan pumping 215 miles an hour going down into the corner, it would take your breath away. And some of the speeds that they ran at the 1.5 miles, like Charlotte and Atlanta, absolutely stunning. And again, I think, sometimes you can be going so fast that your first thought as a driver is, I have to make sure that A, I don't wreck, and then B, try to pass somebody. So sometimes you can be going so fast it hurts the competition. So there's a balance there. And I think NASCAR has struck a little bit, a pretty good balance. And I also think they're making the right move next year, trying to allow some more horsepower back onto the short tracks and onto the road courses.
Yeah.
If you're all running the same speed, a guy makes a mistake, you really can't pass him. But if you have something in reserve, they make a mistake, you can drive underneath and hit the gas. Car jumps out of the hole a little bit with more horsepower. I think that'll make for better racing.
Thank you, Mark. And on the other side of our 30, we are going to ask Mark a question, and then I got a couple bullet point things before he lets us go. We let him go, whatever you want to call it. We're going to have that for you next.
Are you ready? Let's go!
In the moments that matter most.
Oh, it's a multi-car accident. That took out about 2/3 of the field.
Charlie, hello. I'm going to rest.
You count on reliability.
Give our safety workers plenty of room to work.
For more than 40 years, AMCUS has been a partner of NASCAR, arming first responders with an arsenal of hydraulic and battery-powered rescue tools designed to help them move faster and stay safer.
Turn two. A nice assist from the AMR safety team.
Trusted by first responders nationwide when it comes to saving lives. That's why AMCUS is the trusted rescue tool of NASCAR.
He has gotten out of his race car on his own 2 feet.
Proven in the toughest moments. Tested on the biggest stages. Proudly made in the USA and powered by decades of innovation. 40 years of trust. 40 years of saving lives. Built for rescue.
AMR safety team, super quick as they always are.
Built for precision.
Really good job in traffic.
Built for victory.
absolutely dominates this race.
Let's go, fellas! Awesome job!
Well, not only you, Mark, but your co-legendary partner, Doug Rice. You worked the booth for many years at PRN. He just retired a few years ago. He's still around. We see him at I love seeing him at Echo Park and Las Vegas and any other tracks he shows up at. What was it like working with arguably one of the great broadcasting teams in NASCAR history, you and Doug?
Well, it was certainly something that over time we developed such a relationship that we used to joke about. I'd get ready to say something and Doug will go, that was the next thing that was coming out of my mouth, and there were times he would say something and I would finish the sentence or vice versa. And I think that what people don't really realize is that Doug and I had worked together before we ever got to PRN. I was with Capital Sports and decided to go out and broadcast these Busch Series races, now the Xfinity Series races that nobody cared about, but the racing was great. South Boston, Virginia, Rougemont, North Carolina, Hickory, Myrtle Beach, Oxford Plains, Maine, all these little bull rings. And Doug and I would go around and broadcast those for Capital Sports. Matter of fact, we used to tow around. Benny Parsons would occasionally go and do races with us. We did one up in Oxford Plains, Maine in 1990. And they started 47 cars on a 1/3 of a mile racetrack with no pit road. The pit road was a figure eight track there in the middle of the infield, and they were going to start 40 cars. That was the regular field back then for the Busch Series, but then you had provisionals, and you had to provide 3 for the North, and then you had 4 for the South. So 47 cars started, and they had a yellow flag. Patty Moise spun early in the race, like lap 8, and so they had to start single file. So Chuck Mound was the leader, and he took the green flag, and the 47th car was basically just barely exiting turn 1. And he lapped like 20 cars on the restart before one guy said, screw this. He hung a right-hand turn and blocked him. As they're all trying to come up to speed, he's running wide open, all past everybody. And in that race, only 3 cars wound up on the lead lap. And thankfully, they had only 3 spots on the scoreboard. And so Benny Parsons said, what do we do? And I go, hang on to those 3 cars like they're a lifeboat in the ocean. We may not know who's running 4th. We may not know who's running 5th or 10th, but we know who the top 3 are, and don't let them go. And so we were out there doing those. So Doug and I had that experience. Then we moved on. I was actually at PRN before Doug, and then Doug came in there and eventually, of course, became the president and general manager of the network as well. So we had a few years together before we ever got there. And the reason we were together is when I got ready to do these Busch Series races, Barney Hall, legendary, maybe the best ever to do it on radio. He always would kind of mentor me when I was at MRN. He was certainly somebody who mentored me. And I called him up and said, Barney, I need a co-anchor. What do you think? He said, well, I hear about this. There's this kid down in Salisbury. And he said, really wants to do it. He said, and he'll probably do it for next to nothing. So that was music to my ears because I had no budget to do any of this stuff. And so I called up and I said, well, what's his name? He said, his name is Doug Rice. So I called up Doug, and again, we wound up working together in the booth for better than 35 years.
That is outstanding. On the other side of this 30, I've just got 3 bullet point type questions, although I think you can expand all you want. NASCAR insider Mark Garrow, we're going to have those questions for you next. This is Roy J. Akers for the High Bank Fury podcast. We are followed multiple times weekly where we talk to NASCAR drivers, cover stories, and those that shape the sport. This is not just another podcast. We get exclusive content, talk fantasy NASCAR racing, and spill the news before other media outlets drop their take. We are on all podcast channels, the YouTube channel, and can be found on skyviewsports.net. Check out High Bank Fury, the podcast, today. Well, I'm going to ask you the best driver, best race, and the best broadcasting pipes in NASCAR. Who's the best driver you have seen in NASCAR? If you can give the classic era, the golden era, and now, or all together, you choose.
Well, again, Richard Petty's won the most races, but I loved Cale Yarborough. Cale Yarborough was one of those drivers that could take a fifth place car and just will it to the front. He'd come out of his car and his hands would be all bloodied and blistered from just wrestling this car to no end to try to fight his way to the win. I thought a lot of him. David Pearson, smooth as silk. I loved Dale Earnhardt's aggressiveness, and on pure driving talent, I don't think Kyle Busch gets enough credit a lot of times for pure driving talent. Jeff Gordon's another one of those. Now Kyle Larson. What I was always impressed with some of these guys, they could jump in a lot of different stuff. And this is another answer another name that may catch you by surprise a bit, but Bobby Allison. Bobby would drive NASCAR on Sunday. He might be in a late model, a modified. You never knew what he was going to drive 2 or 3 nights that week before he got back to the NASCAR track on the weekend. And so he was a really, really versatile driver. But those are the guys that stand out. We had so many great ones. You got the Darrell Waltrips that I mentioned. Jimmy Johnson wins 7 championships. But we had a lot of great ones. But those are the ones that popped to the top of my mind.
Best race you ever called?
I think it's going to go back early in my career. Kevin Harvick's first win. We just lost Dale Earnhardt. And 3 races. Hollywood can't make this stuff up. 3 races after he takes over for the legendary driver of the number 3. Kevin Harvick fends off Jeff Gordon. Just rookie driver fends off future Hall of Famer to win his initial Cup Series race. That one will always stick in my mind. I can always remember as he crossed the line and everybody was like going, "Are you sure you saw Kevin win?" But I was able to eyeball it. And I just remember me very excitedly kind of yelling into the mic with the ghost of Dale Earnhardt looking on. Kevin Harvick has won one of the biggest upsets in NASCAR history. And so that one will always stick in my mind. And it was so emotional. I mean, there was so much going on back then. We were still reeling from the loss of Dale Earnhardt. And Kevin Harvick, 3 races later, wins for the first time. You can't make it up. Hollywood would not even think of that script.
You got it. And final, best broadcasting pipes in NASCAR. I mean, just what a voice.
Well, I would give his voice an A, but Ken Squire an A+ for his word magic. I mean, he could weave words together in a stock car race that sounded like poetry, and especially how he used to close the broadcast. CBS would show a shot of the sun going down and the wind whipping the trash around the racetrack. And Ken, there was nobody better than Ken in trying to really set that picture and just in pure poetic terms, bringing a race to an end, bringing a broadcast to the end. And I also will say this, on radio, nobody was smoother. He was as smooth as butter, and that was Barney Hall. He was a great one.
Yeah, Barney Hall is the Babe Ruth of NASCAR broadcasting, and I got to record one of the early podcasts in the Barney Hall booth with another broadcaster earlier this year, and I could still feel Barney kind of on the table, as I put my hand on there and that. Everybody, Mark Garrow, PRN Radio, the Garage Pass. Are you going to continue with the podcast or?
No. I'm going to be getting away from that at the end of the year. Again, before this, I did 14 years of a show called Winston Cup Today. So I've been doing this show nonstop for 30 some odd years, being on deadline. So that is something that I'm going to take a breather from. But I'm going to be involved in NASCAR in some form, whether it's short tracks, whether it's whatever it is. I'm going to still be around the racetrack a lot. I really want to go back to the short tracks. I love, a couple of times this year, went and saw the Cars Tour, loved it. Smart Modified Tour, loved it. Lenny Baticki, who is with PRN and does their short track show. he's all the time hustling out to different racetracks, and he's going to put me in his passenger seat one day, and we're going to go around and spend a couple of weeks just hitting a bunch of short tracks. So racing's been in my DNA. I went to my first race when I was 1 year old. My dad was a flagman. My mom scored the races. So I'm 67. So I've been around it 66 years. I'll still be around racing until the good Lord calls me home. So what form that takes after this, I have no idea, but I'll certainly be involved in some sort of racing.
Everybody, High Bank Fury. We got a legend over here on this side.
In my own mind.
There you go.
By
A
the way,
legend in my own mind. And we have Mark Garrow, PRN Radio. And Mark, we got to thank you very much for coming on. We certainly, the audience is enlightened by learning about NASCAR and about names that they don't hear as much. And so thank you very much, Mark.
I appreciate it. Thank you, and have a great day.
You too.
It's been nearly 600 days since Martin Truex Jr. visited Victory Lane. He did it at his favorite place by winning at the Dover Motor Speedway. And Mark, it was a fierce battle for the last two-thirds of the race between him and Ross Chastain.
If Martin Truex Jr. needs a place to get things right, it's the Monster Mile. Fourth victory here to go, along with 3 runner-ups. You mentioned how long it's been since his last trip to Victory Lane, 54 races. It's hard to believe. But when he got the lead today, I just got the feeling he wasn't going to let anybody take it away, even Ross Chastain.
You know, last year was so disappointing for Truex, not getting into the playoffs, not winning. All of that goes away with this victory here today.
It certainly does. He's in the playoff. The pressure's off there. That makes him more dangerous as the year goes on, as we get into our summer months. And Doug, as you mentioned on the broadcast at the end, the fairy tale ending, we never really get it. Well, we got it for the Truex family here this weekend.
And the subplot of all of this is going to be Ross Chastain, once again involved, and he instigated a crash that eventually took out Kyle Larson. That's going to be talked about for quite a while.
You scratch one more guy off the Christmas card list.
I think at the end of the race, might have hurt it even because there were a lot of cars that made it very tough for Chastain to try to run down Martin Truex Jr. Truex wins on Saturday and again on Sunday here at Dover, Delaware.